What's up, Ramblers? Your favorite CEO is back. And before we begin today's podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode. And follow Assistance HQ and Offsource HQ across all platforms to stay up to date on the latest content, updates, and more. And remember, if you need a virtual assistant, visit us at offsource.tech. Now, before we begin, a word from our sponsor.
Favorite VR games. Half-Life Alyx. It's just the best one, but it is the most polished AAA virtual reality first-person shooter. The graphics are incredible, the physics are great, the way that it works is awesome. No, but like almost.
Okay, because I played Saints and Sinners, The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners.
Yeah, that's another great one. That's so good.
Polished.
Yeah, that's another one that I was going to mention that is also like a big AAA title that really feels great in VR.
This is The Ramblings. Hey guys, welcome back to another wonderful episode of The Ramblings. I am your host, Angelo Roberts. I have with us today Jacob Ennis. He is a wonderful person. We actually just recently met. He's working with a company called the Center of Simulation and Innovation. He's a business development specialist working in the VR, AR space. As you guys know, we just had Jose Santiago on because we are in a VR frenzy right now. How are you doing today, Jacob?
Very good. I'm happy to be here. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Super glad to have you here. So, as normal, as we always like to kind of start off, give us the 3-minute spiel, who you are, what you do, and why we should even listen to anything that you'll be saying today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said before, my name is Jacob Ennis. I work for the Center for Simulation and Innovation. We are a startup company out of Ann Arbor. We've been around for about 10 months now, developing a lot of new and interesting augmented reality and virtual reality stuff. And we're, trying to get our name out there, finding our market, doing all that really cool startup stuff, building all these new things. So my role specifically within the company is kind of a dual role. As a startup, it's a lot of times people wear a bunch of different hats. And so I've kind of got two hats. The first hat is sales. And so I work in sales and marketing. I know the products. I can talk about the products. I can try to find the right sort of people who might be interested in the sort of software that we develop. And then on the other side, I'm also a software developer. So I develop some of our software for Unreal Engine. I work with artificial intelligence. I work with virtual reality. So I kind of get to decide on a day-to-day basis when I want to be social and when I want to go to networking events or when I want to huddle up next to the computer and, build some software. So I get the freedom to be able to do that, which is really cool. But what we do as a company, our focus is a little bit different than most augmented reality and virtual reality development.
Okay.
Or at least most of what people see virtual reality or augmented reality as. Most people's experiences with AR and VR is for entertainment purposes, which is great. That's things like Pokemon Go was kind of a lot of people's first real introduction to what augmented reality looks like. Virtual reality video games, things like that. That seems to be a lot of the focus of the VR and AR industry right now. And instead of focusing on entertainment, while our experiences are entertaining, our idea is to use augmented reality and virtual reality as media platforms for education and training.
Okay.
So things like augmented reality textbooks, where the information that a student is reading about comes right off of the page on their phone, and they can interact with it and see all sorts of extra content that sits right on top of the book. Augmented reality business cards and things like that for marketing purposes, and virtual reality training simulation with artificial intelligence. So people within the training simulation can have full conversations with all of the non-player characters in that world and really get an immersive and exciting training experience out of it.
That is a lot. Now, that is, like you mentioned, is a very different approach than taking like that entertainment first kind of basis. Walk me through some of the softwares that you were part of that you helped develop, or some of the products that your company has pushed out in regards to that educational productivity kind of space. What are the things that you guys are looking at building or have already built?
Yeah, so right now we're kind of looking at a couple of different areas. We've recently been, we've had all these awesome brainstorming sessions. and we've built some really cool applications. And now we're at the point where we're narrowing things down and saying, hey, we've got all these cool products. What, from a marketing standpoint, should we focus on first? So that way we can bring something fully to market that has advertising materials with it, that has the client base figured out. And then, so what should we choose first? And then where do we go after that? What's the next step? And which of our products are going to really catch on? And so we have a few different products right now that we're really working with. Exhibit Sim, which is essentially the idea of using augmented reality to exhibit or show information beyond what's presented physically. And so this can be a poster on a wall that somebody can use augmented reality so that there's extra information on top of it. And whether that's used for like a sales or marketing thing, like maybe there's an entertainer who wants his album covers or his posters or whatever it is to have like an animated version of him on stage, right? That's something that we could do. Or maybe it's in a classroom, right? And you have posters up inside of a classroom, and they've got extra content on them that the students can get excited about. And so within that Exhibit Sim family, we also do textbooks or any books, business cards, billboards, essentially anything that's in the physical world. We can take that and create content on top of it that people can access on their phone. So that's kind of the main thing that we're focusing on right now from a marketing standpoint. But we also have some other stuff that we're doing, working with on the development side, working with artificial intelligence for that training, where people who are inside of the training simulation can have full conversations with the characters in the simulation. And each of those characters has a distinct personality that we can build and create. And we've also been working with 3D design and Gaussian splatting, which is this new rendering technique that allows people to use a series of images or a video and create a 3D space using that video. And so we're trying to implement that into some of our development to create some really realistic and cool looking environments. So those are kind of the main things that we've been focusing on right now. We've also had something called Concussion Sim, which was essentially a simulation program designed to help on-field personnel diagnose concussions and what to do if someone has one, how serious it is, and making those split-second decisions to keep their players safe.
That's a lot of information and technology being utilized and trying to be built all at one particular time. And I remember in a previous conversation, I don't think software coding was your original background. Do you want to speak a little bit more on that? How did you get into this VR AR space, the coding, and share with them the story about how you got into this company?
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to. So I was not at all, at least in a professional sense, in the software development space until this year. Before that, I taught for 5 years. I taught middle school and high school, and teaching was it was a great experience. I ended up leaving that field for a lot of the same reasons that you see some other teachers who are probably leaving the field, where it just got to the point where I need to be able to buy a house and I can't. And, the market went sideways, and I at some point in my life, I want to be able to support a family. And so I had to start, looking at my future and deciding what I should do. And so while I was kind of going through that thought process, I had an old boss call me back when I worked as a student worker at Concordia University. When I was in college, the IT director there is now one of the co-founders of this business of CSI that I work for now. And so he
Synergy.
calls me and he says, look, I know you're a big VR hobbyist. He said, I know you like virtual reality and that you do stuff with VR at home. And he said, and I know that you're a teacher. I would love to talk to you about how you think those two worlds could benefit each other. Because this company that I'm founding is looking to create virtual reality software for education. And so we had a conversation, just a pretty basic conversation about where the pain points of teachers are, what some of the hurdles could be, what kinds of things need to be present in order to get teachers to adopt a new technology. And in the process of talking about this stuff, I kind of let it slip that I was considering other potential career options.
Mhm.
And fast forward a few months, and now I'm working at the Center for Simulation and Innovation with him again, which is really cool because he was my boss before, and now we have this new dynamic working in this company, and so I know the people who work there, and I kind of know the atmosphere already.
Okay, so I want to get into, I guess, not only just that relationship between the both of you, but your relationship as a VR hobbyist and being within education. Obviously, he reached out to you because you have some kind of would have some kind of knowledge in regards to how those spaces would kind of mesh and be combined. Where do you say you fall in that spectrum of education and VR? Are you more education based or are you more of the VR experience based? What do you kind of prefer? What is your knack in that area?
That's a really good question. I I love the ability to have both in the career that I work for because I've always been, ever since I was really young, I've always been very interested in computers. And after virtual reality started to become a more mainstream popular concept around, I think it was like 2013 when some of the first VR headsets started to come out and people were getting really excited about it. I thought that it was just the coolest thing ever. And so I ended up purchasing a virtual reality headset and I got totally addicted to, learning more about virtual reality and trying all these new experiences that people were building. And so that computer hobbyist portion of my life was reflected in my teaching. I would teach technology courses a lot. And so I teach kids about how to build a computer, how a virtual reality headset works, what artificial intelligence is, how to use a 3D printer, all of those like basic up and coming technological advancements that I think kids need to know about. And so from there, it was actually a fairly easy transition to I started working in sales primarily
Okay.
because I knew I wasn't afraid to talk in front of people because that was my job. As a teacher, you've got to talk in front of people that don't want you there and don't want to listen to anything you say. So, like, sales is way easier than.
So how did you even get into becoming a teacher? Like only because I kind of know we're in that same age bracket. So in 2013, you would have been a lot younger than you are right now.
Mhm.
But but your career path initially took you into teaching. How did that happen versus you say going to college for like computer engineering? What was the purpose of pursuing teaching?
So, there were a couple things that factored into that. I considered both of those options. I considered getting a computer science degree and I considered getting an education degree. I kind of always wanted to be a teacher when I was younger. I like being able
That's
to.
very odd.
Yeah. I like being able to help people learn. I like being able to explain things. I'm really into history, and so I was a U.S. history teacher too, and I liked being able to do that. But I also considered I knew that teaching wasn't going to make as much money, but back then the economy was doing a lot better than it is. And I thought that it could be a good career path, and I knew that if I went into computer science as a degree, I would have to take a lot of mathematics courses, and that's my weak point. I'm not very good with mathematics, and so I decided that I would go into education, and I would keep learning more about computers and maybe become sort of a computer science professor or something in the future. Maybe I get my master's or my doctorate in some sort of computer science field. And so, even though that sort of idea never fully came to fruition, I did end up working in a computer science industry anyway.
That's actually a very unique perspective that you have, especially to work in an education-based kind of VR technology company.
Hmm.
Now, you said you've been doing this, the company's been around for about 10 months. What has those 10 months been like for you, and how would you compare that to your life as a teacher?
It is wildly different. And I love both. Like, I really did enjoy being a teacher. It was intense and it was very regimented as a teacher, where how I work now is it's still like a lot of work. Like, I'm still working probably the same amount of hours that I did as a teacher, but I totally get to make the hours myself. And I think that might be more indicative of working for a startup as opposed to working specifically in the technology sector. I know most people, if you go and get a job in the technology sector, you're probably working like a standard 9 to 5 schedule.
Mhm.
And just because of kind of the way that our company works and the type of work that I end up doing and the way that I apply myself to it, I build my own schedule, which means on one side, I get to leave openings for myself to be able to do things that are important to me. But on the other side of it, I'm also responsible for building my own schedule. And so I have to find all of the networking events that I go to, and I have to figure out all of my meetings and all of the times that I need. And I'm responsible for following up with every single person that we talk to as a company. And so it's just an interesting dichotomy. I would say, as far as similarities go, talking to students and talking to parents and convincing them to either learn this information or keep their kids in my class to learn the information that I'm giving them is very similar to sales. If you are essentially selling them information that they don't want to learn. And
Okay.
so
Which sale
it's
is harder? Because one of them might be in the market for something. The other one, which I would say are parents, they're in the market, but they are probably the most out of market, in market people that don't realize it yet. Like, you
right.
need this, but you don't realize how much you need this, and you're not willing to shell out the expenses necessary. What
Right.
would you
You
say
are
is the
you are
lot?
required by the government to to have this, right? And I worked
Right.
I worked for a private school. So that means that
Oh,
these parents were spending money to have their kids here. So I have to convince them that the education that I'm giving their kids is worth that much more than the kind of education they could get for free. And so that's a bit of a harder sell. So I would say to parents, they've already made that decision to bring their students to this school, and they've made that for a specific reason. They've all got different reasons, but they have reasons. So the parents are already kind of sold. The kids are not. And so I would say it's definitely a harder sale trying to get a middle schooler to pay attention to the information that I'm trying to give them than it is to get somebody interested in using virtual reality for education or marketing purposes.
wow. So you kind of took your skill set and made your job a lot easier in the day to day of what you do with talking to people. That seems if it's easier, obviously there's still complications to it and everything.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and there's complications to anything. And I think a lot of the complications that we go through now are just the same complications that any other startup business would be going through, as in learning about where we fit and how to expedite our process so that we're making good profit and making products that people are really excited about. And so we have the backbone of that built, but we're still in the process of really learning exactly who we should be targeting and how that's going to work. And that's something that we've been building up to for a long time. And I feel like we're finally there to the point where we we have our market figured out and we know what our products are really supposed to look like. So I'm really excited about the next few months.
I want to touch on that now that you say that. So you guys have been out for 10 months. The pandemic brought about a bunch of online things. In 2020, I believe it was crypto. 2021 was VR/AR. And then 2022 to 2023, we've had like that whole AI. So there have been a boom of companies, especially in the AR and VR space, especially with Quest 3, with Apple rolling out, not Quest 3, Apple rolling out the Vision Pro,
Hmm.
Quest 3 rolling out from Meta. I just got a notification about like a VRHO, like a $3,300 headset from like VRHO or something like that for AI.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
companies are doing things. What are the what are the competitors doing that are already in the market that you see that they're not doing right, where you guys are able to then slip in? What are other VR companies not doing that gives you that gives your company that advantage?
So I think we have a couple of advantages. There's, first of all, because this is such a burgeoning field, we're not competing against VR and AR companies who are building applications for entertainment. We're in an entirely different sector and we're targeting different groups of people. We're not trying to sell our simulation software to gamers. We're trying to sell our simulation softwares to the people who are in training who need to use that software in order to learn things. And so most AR and VR development companies aren't competition. They're friends. They're people that we can learn from, and they can learn from us. They're people we can
Mm.
share information with. There are other companies who do some things that are similar to us. There is another company that has been working on augmented reality textbooks. There's another company. There are quite a few companies that do augmented reality and virtual reality advertising stuff. However, I think we have a leg up for a couple of reasons. First of all, we are remaining absolutely on the very cutting edge of anything that's coming out. A huge part of what I do on a day-to-day basis is research new technologies and see if they can fit into our software development and what benefits they could provide us. And so we already have full AI implementation in a bunch of our products. We are already using, I mean, we started using Gaussian splatting to help render our environments when the research paper proving that Gaussian splatting was possible dropped
Okay,
3 months
so
beforehand.
I'm sorry. I'm not that big at VR as you are, Clary. What is this Gaussian?
Yeah, so this isn't really a virtual reality technology. It's This is something that I've been putting some time into, firstly, originally just because I thought it was really cool. And then after that, because I realized how much potential it could have in the market. And the idea behind it is that you take a video of something, either walking around an object
Mhm.
or walking around some sort of an interior space. And you take that video and you split that video out into a bunch of different frames. So it becomes photos. You feed those photos into an artificial intelligence and it processes them as a point cloud. So it uses this artificial intelligence to analyze each photo and create 3D visual data so that it creates a 3D environment, a 3D copy of whatever it is that you were filming. And so you can take that 3D environment that you just created and you can drop that into a video game, into a simulation, into whatever you're
Oh,
building and
oh,
have that
um,
work.
um, I just saw like a TikTok or a YouTube video, and basically it was like an in-home video game design agency in which is that what they're using to cut down the like if you so I don't play it anymore, but I used to play like NBA 2K. And so when
Yeah.
you're building out the game, they have to have like the people do the mappings when they're like doing the moves and everything like that. Is the AI or the is that particular technology for rendering being used for them to be able to say, hey, we're going to mimic that idea of some kind of mapping to be able to reproduce that at a smaller scale in video games that are being produced by, small time devs.
So similarities, definitely. The
Okay.
When
Yeah,
you're
that's
talking about like you were kind of talking about motion tracking with people, right? So that
yes,
like the NBA 2K characters would be essentially mimicking the same movements of the people that they're actually based on. So
correct.
when Michael Jordan goes in for a dunk, it looks like one of Michael Jordan's dunks because they took a bunch of footage of Michael Jordan and they mapped their character after it.
Mhm.
That is a similar technology, and I'm sure that they'd be using artificial intelligence to help with that where it creates animation based on video, where this one creates 3D environments based on video and photography. So I
I
could
don't
use
know the
my
difference.
I could use my
Only
phone.
because like you say animation, and when you say animation, I think of animation as 2D or 3D. So when you say animation and then you're like 3D rendering, I'm th- I don't get make that gap close.
So like animation is movement.
Mhm. Just movement.
Animation, right? Animation just means movement, like making something move. And so the movement, the way that those NBA 2K characters were moving was because of that scanning technology that they used on the videos to create realistic movement based on real people.
Mhm.
The What we're doing, it's not about the movement as much as it is creating an environment based on those photos. So if I came to visit your house and I had my I could do it with my phone, or it's even better with a 360-degree camera. But I walk around with the camera and I walk around your room. Then I plug that into the artificial intelligence, and now you've got a full 3D version of your room and I could start dropping characters into it. I could make a little simulation in your room.
Okay, so kind of like the Zillow, like you like the Zillow when I can do a apartment tour and they have like the 3D rendering of like the blueprint of the house.
Exactly like that. Except on Zillow,
Ah,
they're using laser scanning technologies and they're using all this really super expensive stuff. Gaussian splattering can be done with just a cell phone or just a 360 camera, and it's higher resolution. It looks better.
wow. So you've been looking and getting into this kind of stuff before that, like you said, before that research on that it's proven even came out. How are you staying so cutting edge?
So a lot of that is just time invested. A lot of that is just because I've been into computers for so long, I know a lot of groups that keep up on advancements in different areas. So like advancements in artificial intelligence, and I kind of know where to look to see what's going on. Or advancements in, headset technology or whatever it is that we'd be interested in. And so I keep my eye on that kind of stuff. And if I see anything that looks mildly interesting that's new, I try to do a deep dive on it just so that I can tell whether or not we could use it for our company, and I can tell whether or not it's something that's developed enough to be usable right now. And so with Gaussian splattering, with conversational AI, with some of these things that we've been implementing, those are the ones that I was like, these are cutting edge, and we can implement these technologies into our software development right away.
Okay. So we've been talking real technical for a little bit. I'm sure
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
pretty
we
been
have.
super exhausted from that. I want to
Yeah,
go
so
into something a lot more relaxed, chill in the VR
yeah,
space and everything. What I guess headset do you currently have? Do you have a headset?
yeah, I've got a couple. So
Okay.
I use at home for I do a couple of things in VR, like on my own time. I love racing sims. Like put the VR headset on, get the steering wheel and the pedals, and like drive cars. Just learn how to drive
I've
different
seen
types of
a lot of
cars,
like
race
people
people.
doing those builds, like full screen builds.
Yeah, and I figured it'd be easier and more immersive, less expensive if I use a VR headset instead of having like 5 different screens around me. And I don't have the whole like racing seat and all the crazy stuff that some guys who are really into it will, but I love doing it. I love setting up the wheel and having the force feedback. And I'm a big car guy. So, that kind of thing is really exciting to me. And then I also play a lot of other general VR games too, first person shooters, puzzle games, exploration, whatever I think is neat. And so I have for my racing simulation stuff, I use an HP Reverb G2, kind of an older VR model. It plugs into a computer, but it's got a really high resolution screen. So I like
Okay.
that a lot for the and a high refresh rate. So the motion's very smooth. I like that for the racing. And then for most other VR games, I use my Meta Quest 2 because
Okay.
it's super accessible. The hand tracking is great, and they keep releasing some cool new features for it.
I got a Quest 2 maybe 2 years ago at this point, 3 years ago, and just seeing the evolution of the software over the past year and a half,
Oh,
from
it's
the
incredible.
increased hand tracking to the changes that they do with the screens and how, like, you're moving everything around. I say that is absolutely phenomenal. What are some of your favorite games on Quest 2? Let's get into, like, just something chill, like, what do you like to do and play in your downtime? You mentioned that you do like to do racing. I see here kinda want you to get into it, beer brewing.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, we can talk about that hobby a little bit soon too. I favorite VR games. I've played quite a few of them. Half-Life Alex
Okay,
is
you're like the 5th person to say that. I'm buying half like Alex today.
it's just the best one. Like it really is just like, well, maybe that's up for debate, but it is, I would say, the most polished and triple A sort of feeling virtual reality first person shooter. It's the graphics are incredible, the physics are great, the way that it
Is it a
works is
Forerunner?
awesome. No, but like almost.
Okay,
There's
'cause
it's
I play that, The Walking Dead: Saints and Sinners, and
Yeah,
to
that's
me,
another great one. That's so good.
polished.
Yeah, that's another one that I was gonna mention that is also like a big triple A title that really feels great in VR.
Love it. So what are some of, because you're in the productivity educational space, especially with Quest 2 rolling out a lot of productivity apps. That's how I discovered Spike. I believe now up there like Miro board, they're going to start adding, like, they have Facebook Messenger and Facebook. They
Hmm?
got Gravity Sketch. What are some of your
Yeah.
favorite productivity apps that you like to use within Quest?
Well, other than our own software, which of course I would say that because I'm involved in
Right.
the development of it and whatnot. Other than using things that we've developed for ourselves, I really like, actually there's a couple of things that are really simple. And I forget what they call it. I've been using it for a while. There's screen mirroring software for the Oculus where you can see your desktop displays on your computer wirelessly through the Oculus. And so I can actually go about doing things using my computer, like
Immersed
virtual
VR?
meetings and stuff like that, inside of virtual reality. So
Immersed VR.
is that what it's called?
That's the one I use, which is
Yeah.
Immersed VR. Meta Workplace has jumped over the past year. Like, I remember when I first got into Meta Workplace, I was like, this is terrible. Much prefer
Mm,
using Immersed,
yeah.
but
And I
once,
think that is the one that I've been using is
because
immersed VR.
they have a really good community, and like they've been making leaps and strides to make sure
Mhm.
that they stay above Meta Workplace, in like that virtual reality working kind of space. Now, inside of Quest, there's a bunch of stuff. What are some of the apps that you guys have on Quest? If there's anything that we could download or people that can try out.
Do you mean like things that we've developed so far for people to
Develop,
download?
yeah, developed, been a part of. Like, what are things that are under your company's umbrella that we might be able to test out for a bit?
So right now, we do a lot of custom development for specific training programs. And so what ends up happening is that
Mm,
instead of releasing the files for that on the MetaQuest store, we give those files directly to the company.
gotcha.
And sometimes those training simulations or programs are things that are specific to the machinery that that company uses. And so it's stuff that they might not even want being made publicly available.
Right. Okay.
Unfortunately, there are demos that I've made, especially regarding conversational AI, being able to talk to people in virtual reality
Mm,
that I've ported to the Quest and that I've been thinking about putting on App Lab. So although there's nothing on there yet, keep your eyes out for anything by the Center for Simulation and Innovation on Oculus App Lab because, or I guess Meta App Lab, because probably about to drop a couple of things as long as I can get permission from the people who I base the avatars off of
mhm.
to allow me to do that. So that's like a next step thing soon. But right now we don't have any VR applications that are officially on like the App Store that somebody could just go and download.
Wow. Well, man, we've gone from like super deep tech talk to kind of some conversational things about the virtual reality space. I would like to get your personal thoughts on what VR is going to be like in the next 5 years. Where do you see us going? And what are some of the big things that you're excited to see coming out? Like, do you plan on getting the Apple Vision Pro? Do you, like, what are some of the big news events that you're excited for?
Yeah, yeah. So VR is moving pretty quickly. And I think when VR originally released, circa 2013 to 2015, and they start the first HTC Vive and the first Oculus Rift and all these things that people were using, the software for them was, like I said before, mostly entertainment focused. And those headsets were, while they were great proofs of concept, they were expensive and performance wise not super high quality, right? Because they're older technology. And so
Mhm.
I think virtual reality kind of lost a lot of steam because you had to connect them to a computer, and that computer had to be pretty monstrous, especially back then, pretty
Right.
expensive in order to handle that stuff. And so they were selling to a very small consumer base. Now that we've got these, like the Meta Quest 2 and the Meta Quest 3, we've got even the Microsoft HoloLens for augmented reality. We have headsets that work on their own, that you don't need to purchase a bunch of other expensive equipment and you don't need to be tethered to something to use them. And so I think that was a major development because I really feel like VR is coming back into mainstream. I think people are getting excited about it again. And it's going to get more powerful, especially the headsets that are standalone that don't require a PC. The hardware in those is going to be getting a lot better within the next 5 to 10 years, to the point where they're going to be able to handle some really, really impressive graphical stuff. And then they're also going to get a lot physically smaller. I've already seen some virtual reality headsets that are essentially the size of a pair of glasses. And while they're super, super expensive, they're also incredible because you don't have this heavy thing weighing on your face. You don't really feel like you're wearing anything at all, and you're just in that world. So it's going to get lighter, smaller, more immersive. There's going to be way more types of software and new things you can do with it. And I think from the augmented reality side, within the next 10 years, we're going to have contact lenses that we can put in our eyes that will show us a digital overlay and that can show us all sorts of data about things on top of the real world.
I'm excited for that. Like, I have been waiting for that since a child. Like, every time I would
Hmm.
watch Iron Man or just see any kind of thing with technology where they're going like this and everything like that,
Yeah,
you know,
Robo and Terminator way back in the 80s. They
bro,
they
like
had that like crazy. And
trying
now
to
we're
do
finally
that.
getting to the point where we can do that.
Man, I was so excited, especially when I got my Quest 2. I got my Quest 2, and it was a really kind of like anticlimactic moment because literally, I think it was like maybe 10 days later after I bought my Quest 2, 64 gigabytes, they dropped the price of the 128 to the
Yup,
price of the 64.
I
It
remember.
discontinued the 64 gig. And I said, I just if I could have just waited 10 days, 10 days, I could have been able to get the 120. And at
For the
first,
same price. Yep.
exactly. And at first, my initial reaction, my reason for buying a Quest is because immersed VR. Like, I was in the market for a second monitor for like work and everything.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't know how it happened, but immersed VR, whoever's on that like like search engine marketing team, they're genius because I was looking for a second controller. Second monitor. Next thing I know, on Facebook, everything is like, hey, immersed VR, multiple screens. And I'm like, I don't have a Quest. So I'd have to pay $15 for this, but then I'd have to buy a Quest. And I'm like, well, I need another monitor anyway. Let me see what I can do. When I thought
Right.
64 gigs, I'm only doing work. I did not know the level at which gaming could be possible on Quest
Hmm.
before I saw the productivity part. The productivity is what really kind of snapped me in. And just to see the progress that has happened over the past years is phenomenal.
Yeah,
So that brings
it's wild. And I think Meta has done there's a lot of things that Meta has messed up when it comes to the VR space. Like the metaverse was marketing wise really a flop. But the way that they've made it very accessible for content creators to create virtual reality content on the Quest has
Mhm.
been great for the VR community. And they've made a something that's really accessible for people to purchase where they don't need to spend tons of money in order to experience virtual reality. There's I mean, I feel like every day there's like 5 to 10 new Quest games on at least on App Lab, but even on the store, it's just growing exponentially. And so there's so much software out there now for the Quest series of headsets that it's really if if you're someone listening who doesn't have a virtual reality headset but has thought about it or considered it, the getting a Quest 2 or a Quest 3, depending on what your budget is a really good idea right now because there is a huge library of stuff that you can play with.
I agree. Now, before we officially have to get you out of here, we want to ask some more pointed questions and everything. One of which is going to be a lot more relaxed. What was your how would I put this? What was your aha moment when using VR? Like, what made you say, this is where I need to put my eggs at?
So, I guess I've had like a few of them. At first, it was watching videos of people playing on those really early VR headsets and
Mhm.
just having my mind blown. You know, like it moves with your head and it's you can see it in 3D and it's both eyes and people were talking about how it feels like you're there. And so that was the first aha moment where I knew that it was going to be something that I was going to be really interested in. And then Later on, it was probably when I bought my first VR headset,
Mhm.
and it was, I mean, by today's standards, it's, a pretty weak virtual reality headset. But at the time, I booted it up and I bought a couple of VR games and I started playing stuff, and I was playing like Beat Saber, just like those classic virtual reality games that people talk about a lot. And I was blown away by it again. I was like, this really is super, super cool. I'm standing up, I'm active, I'm entertained. I feel like I'm inside of another place. Like thinking about playing a virtual reality game or thinking about my experiences playing in VR is very different than thinking about my experiences playing a 2D game, because it's that much more immersive. And so that's when I got hooked on virtual reality, and I just kept making it a hobby of mine for a long time. And then when I started talking to Chris, who's my boss at CSI, one of the co-founders, he hearing about the ways that he wanted to integrate virtual reality with productivity and education and training was that third aha moment of, this industry is going to be way bigger than a lot of people expect it to be, and it's somewhere where I would like to be involved. And so that's kind of the path that my brain went into, of figuring out augmented reality and virtual reality and how beneficial those can actually be.
So if you, after everything you've seen, said, talked about, spoken, if there was one thing that you could make readily available for VR technology companies today, what would be that one thing that isn't perfect that that you and your heads would be, if this could be solidified, it would bring VR to the forefront?
So I think Meta's getting close on this. Uh, Hand tracking with physical feedback. And so essentially the idea that you have, trying to find a way to explain this, because people have developed it, but it's not really there yet. You put on these gloves, right?
Mhm.
And they're connected to the headset or to your computer or however you're running your virtual reality. And when you grab something, the gloves provide resistance to your fingers, because there's like motors and hydraulics connected, so that when you're grabbing something in VR, it feels like you're grabbing it in real life, and it can emulate something that's squishy, or it can emulate something that's concrete, or however it is. So you can actually feel, and it's not, obviously it wouldn't be perfect, but you can feel the shapes of things, and you can
Right.
feel like you're holding something in virtual reality. I think that's going to be the big next step for immersion. After that, full body, where it's you can have physical sensation across your entire body or the majority of your body. So not only does it look like you're there and sound like you're there, it feels like it.
That actually is the perfect setup for this final question that we have for you. How or okay, because you're in productivity education, what do you think will be the, not only, I guess, from your perspective, being in that particular space, but just as a general adoption standpoint, who do you think is going to be the first or what do you think is going to be the first industry to fully embrace productivity and education in the VR space?
So I don't know if it's going to be a specific industry that really adopts it first. I think it's going to be maybe a broader range of companies who are more experimental and forward thinking. So usually the first businesses to adopt something in the tech sector are businesses that are also in the tech sector, but they're developing something else.
Mhm.
And when it comes to companies that work within the tech sector, so maybe we're talking about processor manufacturing companies. I would be very surprised if they weren't already implementing training or workplace usage of like Microsoft HoloLens units for augmented reality on top of the things that they do. I think it's those tech companies that are going to be first. And then I think universities are going to be right there too, because universities have the same thing. They're forward thinking, they're involved within education. They want to show that they're on top of new technologies, and they want to be able to provide the best possible education. They're very competitive. I think universities are a place where I've already seen, I was at Oakland University in Michigan here not that long ago, and they've already got a virtual reality lab and a degree specialization specifically for building virtual reality apps.
Wow.
So like they're already on top of it. And Oakland University, it's a great university, but they're usually not the number one first. They're not like specifically a technology university. So
Right.
when we're talking about universities that are engineering schools or universities that focus primarily on technology, they've been even faster.
Bro, you have not only been able to share with us so many personal like notes within your life and everything, but also just the notes from your knowledge in this VR and AR space, especially within education. So I'd like to be able to ask you last one final question, which is give us your shameless plug for CSI. What exactly a breakdown again of what you do, where we can find you, if there's a customer, like what, like give it so that if someone was listening, they hear it and they're like, I gotta call Jacob.
Yeah, absolutely. So Center for Simulation and Innovation, even though we're based in Ann Arbor, we do work for people all across the world. And we work in three ways. We do education, custom software for education, custom software for training, and custom software for marketing. So if you're someone who wants to find a new and more immersive, more effective way to train your employees, or if you're someone who wants to create a marketing campaign or some marketing materials that use this technology that stand out from the crowd, those are the things that we specialize in, and we tailor it exactly to what your needs are and the things that you want to see inside of that experience. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, you can contact me at 734-330-3445. You can look us up at centerforsimulationinnovation.com, or you can email me at jacob.ennis@centerforsimulationinnovation.com.
There you guys have it. That's exactly where you all need to go. It's been a wonderful Ramblings episode, and we will see you tomorrow.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Hey, Ramblers, that's it. Podcast is over. Don't leave yet, though. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, and follow us on YouTube at OffSource HQ. We'll see you next time.